Hello there, and welcome to Drift to the Stars. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Before we begin, I'd love to know, what country are you writing from? And what time is it there right now? Are you here alone, easing yourself towards sleep while dreaming of what happiness really is? Or are you at the table with people you love, half listening while the food goes warm? Either way, I'm glad you're here. Tonight, we're going to drift through 100 quiet, true things about happiness, what it is inside the body, what it looks like in the forest, what it sounds like across an ocean. Not to teach, just to remind. If tonight's journey gives you something gentle to carry, please consider sharing or liking this video. Someone out there may need exactly this, and your small gesture is how they find it. Now, if you're ready, let's begin. There is a moment when two people are truly present with each other, when something shifts in the body that has nothing to do with words. It is not a metaphor. The brain, when it registers genuine human connection, activates the same neural pathways that process warmth on the skin, the same circuits that know the feeling of a blanket drawn close, of sunlight landing on an arm. Scientists call this social warmth, and the overlap is not coincidental. It is old. The human nervous system learned, somewhere back across thousands of generations, that being close to another living being meant being safe. And safety, it turns out, is where happiness begins. Not joy, not excitement, but the quiet permission the body gives itself when it believes the world is not against it. Even now, in whatever room you're in whatever city, with whatever noise the night is making outside, if there is one person or one memory that makes your chest feel less tight, that is already something ancient working in your favor. The universe has been expanding for roughly 13 billion years. Not quickly, not slowly by its own measure, but just steadily, the way a breath moves outward without asking permission. Every galaxy is moving away from every other galaxy. The distances involved are so large that no human image contains them. And yet, inside all of that, on a small blue world orbiting an ordinary star in the outer arm of an ordinary galaxy, something decided to pause today. You did. You pressed play and let the noise of the day recede. This is not a small thing. In a universe defined by motion, choosing stillness is its own kind of quiet courage. Astronomers who spend their lives measuring the scale of everything, the emptiness between stars, the cold between galaxies, often describe a feeling not of insignificance, but of astonishment that anything exists at all. That the conditions for a listening human were met, that here we are. Whatever is weighing on you tonight can be held beside that, not erased, just placed beside something very large, and allowed to be its actual size. Long before a person decides to smile, the face has already begun to move. The muscles around the eyes, the ones that cannot be consciously forced into a genuine expression, start their work before the conscious mind has caught up, and what follows in the blood is measurable. Serotonin levels shift. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, decreases. Even a smile held alone in an empty room, not performed for anyone, not felt deeply at first, creates a small change in the chemistry of the moment. The Japanese researcher Sandra Barrett spent decades studying what she called the face-body conversation. What she found was not that happiness causes smiling, that is obvious, but that smiling, even gently and on purpose, nudges the body toward the conditions in which happiness becomes possible. A door opened a little, light finding a crack. There is something quietly generous about this. The body, it seems, is not waiting for the right circumstances before it cooperates. It is already offering a way in. In the soil beneath a forest, beneath even the oldest trees, there runs a network that has no name in any common language because humans didn't know it existed until recently. Thin white threads, thinner than a hair, connecting root to root across entire acres. These are the filaments of mycorrhizal fungi, and through them, trees pass sugars, water, and chemical signals to one another. The oldest trees in a forest give the most through these networks. They pump carbon and nutrients toward younger, struggling neighbors, including seedlings of different species. Not because they choose to, not because they know, but because their deep roots intersect with the network at more points, and so more passes through them. Botanist Suzanne Simard, who first described this behavior in detail, called these trees mother trees. The name has been debated scientifically, but the phenomenon itself holds. The forest is not a competition of individuals. It is something more like a community, ancient, silent, and generous by its very structure. Happiness, too, seems to move through networks. Studies show it spreads through communities the way a warmth moves through connected rooms. After a genuinely happy experience, a conversation that felt like home, a piece of music that opened something, a meal eaten slowly and without worry, and the body does not simply return to its resting state. The nervous system carries what it felt for hours afterward. Blood chemistry shifts. Immune markers change. Certain inflammation pathways become quieter. Scientists studying what they call positive affect, the technical term for states of well-being, have found that these traces are not just emotional. They are biological. The experience of happiness leaves a kind of physical echo in the cells that does not disappear when the moment does. What this suggests is something both obvious and startling. Happiness is not a brief event. It is more like a tide that retreats slowly. The moment ends, but its effect keeps moving through the body for a long time after, adjusting things quietly, preparing the ground for the next moment of ease. A good hour can make a gentler evening. A gentle evening can make a deeper sleep. Right now, as you breathe, without deciding to, without having to remember, your lungs are performing a feat of such precise complexity that the world's best engineers have spent decades attempting a mechanical version and have not fully succeeded. Each breath draws air across a surface area inside your lungs that, if unfolded, would cover roughly the size of a tennis court. Across that surface, oxygen passes through membranes only 1 cell thick into the blood, and carbon dioxide passes back out, in a molecular exchange so finely calibrated that even small disruptions in body chemistry alter the rate instantly and automatically. And you are doing this right now. You have been doing it every few seconds since before your birth. Not thinking about it, not earning it, not maintaining it consciously. The body, in its daily work, is doing something extraordinary without asking anything in return. This may be, in its quiet way, one of the most generous things in existence. You are already being sustained by something that never asks how you're doing first. When a scout bee discovers a source of nectar or pollen, it returns to the hive and communicates the location through movement. A waggle dance, a figure-8 pattern whose angle indicates direction relative to the sun, and whose duration indicates distance. Other bees observe the dance, calibrate their internal compasses, and fly to the exact location described. This was first decoded by Carl von Frisch in the 1940s, and it remains one of the most remarkable discoveries in the history of animal behavior. The bee does not simply lead the others. It conveys a spatial memory across the gap between one nervous system and another, using only the body, only movement, only the ancient grammar of the hive. What moves something when it finds something good to return and tell others? This question sits quietly at the edge of science. Whatever its answer, the impulse itself is familiar. Finding something good and wanting to share it, that is not uniquely human. It is older than us. The word kindness appears in Old English as sinde, meaning something close to natural or native. To be kind was, linguistically, to act in accordance with one's nature, not a virtue imposed from outside, but a recognition of what the species is, at its root. Modern neuroscience has found something that seems to support this etymology. When a person performs or witnesses an act of genuine kindness, a structure called the nucleus accumbens activates, the same structure involved in eating, in music, in the feel of sunlight. Receiving a small gift activates it, but so does giving one. What is striking is the consistency across cultures studied. The reward response to generosity is not a learned preference. It appears, as far as researchers can tell, to be built in. The word kind, it turns out, may have been right all along. Not a quality we develop, a quality we remember we already have. The Milky Way is not a flat disk seen from above. It is a spiral seen from inside. Our solar system sits in one of its outer arms, moving through it at approximately 220 kilometers per second, which is fast enough to circle the Earth in under 3 minutes. And still, it takes the solar system roughly 225 million years to complete one orbit of the galaxy's center. From one edge of the Milky Way to the other, 100,000 light years. To cross it at the speed of light, the fastest anything in the universe can travel, would take 100,000 years. Every atom in your body heavier than hydrogen was formed inside a star. Not a metaphor, not a poetic approximation. The carbon in your cells, the calcium in your bones, the iron your blood carries right now. These were forged in nuclear fusion, inside stars that burned and died before the Earth existed. You are not visiting the universe. You are made of it. Every breath you take carries atoms with a history that begins at the beginning of everything. There is a study, small and quietly important, in which participants were asked to recall in vivid detail a moment of genuine happiness from their past. Not to perform the memory for researchers, just to hold it, eyes closed, in their own minds. Before and after, the temperature of their hands was measured. In most participants, the hands became measurably warmer. The body, it seems, cannot fully distinguish between a memory and a moment. When the mind returns to a place of warmth, the blood follows. The peripheral vessels open a little. The body treats a recollection as something partially real. This is why, when someone says, "Think of something that makes you happy," it is not merely a distraction. It is a gentle physiological event. The memory acts on the body the way the original moment did, in smaller measure, echoing forward in time. The past, when it is a good one, is still quietly at work inside you. There is a dog, somewhere right now, curled beside a person it loves, and without being trained to do so, without understanding why, it has slowed its breathing to match. Not exactly. Dogs do not mirror with the precision of instruments, but studies measuring respiration rates in dogs resting near their owners during calm moments have found a synchrony that is not accidental. The dog's nervous system reads the human nervous system and follows it. the way one pendulum clock on a wall will, over time, fall into rhythm with another. This is called physiological co-regulation. It happens between humans too, between mothers and infants, between close friends sitting quietly together, between people who have shared a long life in the same rooms. The body listens to the bodies nearby. It takes its cues from them. It is, in a way, always in conversation. The dog does not know it is doing this. It only knows that beside this particular person, the world feels slow enough to sleep in. And that is, perhaps, all it needs to know. Belonging, at its most basic, is one body learning from another that things are all right. Deep inside the human brain, tucked beneath the cortex, where the newer thinking happens, sits a small, almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. It is not large. In most adults, it is roughly 1.5 centimeters across. And yet every emotional memory a person carries, every experience of fear, every feeling of joy, every moment that lodged itself into the body before the mind had a chance to process it, passes through this structure. The amygdala does not store memories in the way a file stores data. It tags them. It marks certain experiences as significant, as worthy of keeping, as things the body should remember next time the world arranges itself in a similar way. A smell that brings a whole summer back. A song that returns a person to a room they haven't entered in 20 years. The amygdala is why this happens. It is the part of you that decided, long before you could choose, what mattered, and what it marked most deeply, across most human lives studied, was not achievement, not status. It was connection. The moments when someone was truly there. After rain falls on dry earth, especially earth that has been dry for a long time, there is a scent that rises. You may know it. It has a name, petrichor. It comes from a compound called geosmin, released by a type of soil bacteria called actinomycetes when rainwater disturbs the ground. The bacteria produce it as part of their life cycle, a byproduct of their ordinary work. But humans are extraordinarily sensitive to it, are able to detect geosmin at concentrations as low as a few parts per trillion, which makes it one of the most detectable natural compounds known to the human nose. Why are humans so attuned to the smell of rain on dry earth? Scientists are not certain. One theory is that ancient humans tracked water sources by scent across dry seasons, and this sensitivity was selected for across thousands of generations. The nose remembers what the body needed, long before the mind knew it had a name for the thing it was looking for. What we call the smell of rain may actually be the smell of water arriving in time, the smell of enough. In a laboratory study, researchers asked pairs of strangers to watch a short comedic clip together, then separately, then with a friend, and then separately again. The laughter that occurred between strangers watching together was not simply louder than laughter alone. It was different in quality, more sustained, more frequent. More interesting still, the researchers measured heartbeats. During shared laughter, the heart rates of the two people briefly synchronized. Not for long, not with perfect precision, but in the seconds during and immediately after a genuine laughing response, two strangers' hearts were, for a moment, moving together. Laughter is often described as a social bonding mechanism, a way of signaling shared understanding, of building trust through shared vulnerability. This is accurate, but the cardiac synchrony adds something more. It suggests that in the moment of genuine shared laughter, the boundary between two nervous systems becomes, very briefly, more porous. Two people laughing together are, in a small and measurable way, briefly the same body. That is not nothing. In a cave, in what is now Slovenia. Researchers discovered a fragment of bone with carefully spaced holes along its length. It was carved from the femur of a cave bear. It is approximately 60,000 years old. When reconstructed and studied, the holes align with the spacing of a standard diatonic scale, the same scale used in most of the music being played anywhere in the world right now. The oldest known musical instrument, played by a person, a full human, with language and grief and memory and curiosity, more than twice as far back in time as the Egyptian pyramids. We do not know what they played. We do not know if they played alone or with others, in celebration or in mourning, or simply because the act of making sound with intention brought them something they needed. But they made it carefully. They put holes in it with purpose. They meant for it to sing. 60,000 years of humans reaching for music when words are not enough. The instrument changed. The reaching never did. Right now, wherever you are resting, your heart is doing something it has done every second since before you were born. Contracting and releasing. Contracting and releasing. Pushing blood through 60,000 miles of vessels in a circuit so complete that a single blood cell can travel from the heart through the body and back again in roughly 20 seconds. It does not need reminding. It does not need managing. It began beating approximately 3 weeks after conception, before your brain existed to give it instructions, before you had a nervous system to tell it what to do. It found its rhythm on its own. There is something worth resting in that fact. Not the scale of it, not the biology, but the simple truth that the most essential work your body does has never once required your attention. The heart keeps its quiet agreement with you, regardless. It has never asked for acknowledgement. It has never needed praise. It simply continues, and so do you. The brain is sometimes described as fixed, a structure that develops in childhood and then slowly wears. But one of the most significant scientific revisions of the last several decades is the discovery that adult brains physically reshape themselves in response to repeated experience. Gratitude, practice, meaning not a feeling of gratitude, but the deliberate, regular act of noticing and naming what is good, has been shown across multiple studies to alter neural pathways in measurable ways. Specifically, it appears to reduce the activity of the default mode network when it is running anxious simulations of the future, and to strengthen pathways associated with reward and social connection. Put plainly, the brain that repeatedly looks for what is good begins, slowly, to look for it more easily. The search becomes less effortful. The pathway widens with use. This is not optimism as performance. It is closer to a kind of training, and the same process by which a musician's fingers learn their way across strings without the mind having to direct each one. The mind that practices noticing goodness begins, gently, to find it without trying. A tree growing on a steep slope in high wind does not grow symmetrically. On the downhill side, the side bearing the weight of gravity and lean, it lays down wood that is denser, stronger, more compressed. This is called reaction wood, and the tree produces it automatically, without instruction, over years and decades. It is not solving a problem in any way we would recognize as thought. There is no signal that says, compensate here. But the slow biology of the tree, cells dividing, wood forming, rings accumulating year by year, to respond to the mechanical stress it lives in and builds accordingly. The tree does not straighten itself. It strengthens where it must. It grows into its particular difficulty, not away from it. There is something in this that feels quietly true about how humans navigate difficult seasons. not by becoming what they were before, but by growing denser in precisely the places that were asked to hold. Strength is often not loud. Sometimes it is just wood, laid down in the dark. There is a measurable response in the human body to certain kinds of vastness. Standing at the edge of a canyon, looking up through the canopy of an old-growth forest, watching a thunderstorm build across a flat horizon. In these moments, something in the body slows, breathing deepens, muscle tension releases, and specific inflammatory markers in the blood decrease. This response has been studied by psychologist Dacher Keltner and his colleagues at the University of California, Berkeley. What they found was that experiences of awe and the feeling of encountering something larger than oneself reliably reduce the levels of cytokines in the body, proteins associated with chronic inflammation, over time, with disease. The ancient response to vastness is not just emotional, it is biological. The body, when it meets something much larger than itself and recognizes it as awe rather than threat, uses the moment to repair. The universe, it seems, is not only where we came from, it is also, in certain quantities, medicine. The Sun is a middle-aged star of ordinary size. It burns approximately 600 million tons of hydrogen into helium every single second. From its surface, light travels outward in all directions through the vacuum of space, and the portion of that light that falls toward Earth arrives here after approximately 8 minutes and 20 seconds. 8 minutes. The warmth you have ever felt from direct sunlight left the sun slightly before you noticed it. By the time it lands on your skin, it has already crossed 93 million miles of nothing. And it arrives, as it always does, exactly on time. Not early, not late. Because the distance and the speed haven't changed, there is something in this that is deeply, quietly reassuring. Not the enormity of the numbers, but the reliability of them. In a universe defined by constant change, certain things simply hold. The light keeps leaving. The earth keeps turning into it. Morning arrives, and arrives, and arrives. Every night, during the hours of sleep, the brain does something that has no precise equivalent in waking life. It replays, not randomly, selectively. The hippocampus, the structure most responsible for consolidating memory, rehearses the experiences of the day in compressed, accelerated sequences, deciding what to strengthen and what to let dissolve. Scientists studying this process have found that the brain does not replay memories neutrally. It edits them. Emotional weight is redistributed. Experiences that felt overwhelming in the moment are often filed, by morning, into a slightly more manageable shape, not erased, just placed more carefully. Sleep is not the absence of thinking. It is a different kind of thinking, a slower, deeper, more interested in patterns than details. The brain, in the dark, is doing its tenderest editorial work, keeping what matters, softening the edges of what hurt. This is one reason why the same problem, revisited after a night of real sleep, so often looks different. Not solved, but held differently. The mind that slept has already begun, without being asked, to find a way to carry it. In the rivers and estuaries of the American Pacific coast, sea otters spend the hours between eating and moving, floating on their backs, wrapped in kelp to keep from drifting. And when they sleep this way, resting together in groups called rafts, they reach sideways in the water and take hold of one another's paws. This behavior has been observed and documented in wildlife sanctuaries and in the wild. The leading explanation is practical. Otters held together do not drift apart on the current and have to spend energy finding each other again. But the gesture is also something else. It is the oldest mammalian reassurance I am here, and so are you. And neither of us will be carried away alone. The otter does not know the name of what it is doing. It only knows that something in its body settles when it is held, even loosely, even by another creature half asleep. The nervous system reads contact as safety. And safety, as we keep finding, is where rest becomes possible. To hold on, even gently, in the dark, this is very old behavior. Scientists have been studying happiness, or, more precisely, its various related states: well-being, positive affect, life satisfaction, flourishing, for long enough now to have produced thousands of papers, dozens of frameworks, and at least 4 competing definitions that cannot fully agree with one another. This is not a failure of science. It is a testament to the actual complexity of the thing being studied. The ancient Greeks had several words for states that English collapses into happiness. The Danes have hig, the Japanese ikigai, the Portuguese saudade, a longing that contains its own sweetness. No single language has found one word precise enough to hold all of what humans mean when they say they want to be happy, which means that happiness, whatever it is larger than any one culture's container for it. It exceeds every definition offered so far. It remains, still, partly a mystery, not because we haven't looked, but because what we are looking for keeps showing us new faces. Something that vast is worth approaching gently and with patience. The human body replaces most of its cells across a lifetime, but not all at once, and not all at the same rate. Cells in the stomach lining are replaced every few days. Red blood cells live approximately 4 months. Bone cells cycle over roughly a decade. Certain neurons in the brain, particularly those in the cerebral cortex, appear to persist for an entire human life without being replaced. What this means is that the body you inhabit is a layered thing. Part of it is very old, as old as you are, continuous from the beginning. Part of it is astonishingly new, found made of matter that was not part of you a week ago. You are not the same body you were 10 years ago in a meaningful biological sense. And yet something persists. Some thread of continuity runs through all the replacement and renewal. Some pattern that remains recognizably you across the decades of change. What is the self? If not the pattern that survives all the changing, that question has no clean answer. But it is a beautiful question to hold loosely in the quiet. In aquariums and in the wild, octopuses have been documented engaging in what can only be described as play. They push objects toward a current and then catch them as they return. They explore puzzles not because there is food inside, but after the food has been removed. They appear, by behavioral measures, to engage with novel objects simply because the objects are there and interesting. An octopus has a nervous system unlike any other. Most of its neurons, roughly 2/3, are not in its brain but distributed through its arms, which can act semi-independently, solving different parts of a problem simultaneously. It evolved intelligence along a completely different branch of the tree of life. The last common ancestor between a human and an octopus lived over 750 million years ago. And still, across that immense distance of evolutionary time, something in them reaches toward novelty for its own sake. Something in them is curious. Curiosity may be older and more widespread than we imagined, more fundamental. Not a luxury of complex minds, but something closer to a basic appetite, a pull toward the world, because the world is interesting. When someone speaks and another person truly listens, not waiting for their turn, not preparing a response, but actually present to what is being said, something shifts in the speaker's body. The voice slows. The muscles in the face relax. Cortisol decreases. The experience of being genuinely heard produces what neuroscientists call felt safety, a physiological state in which the threat detection systems of the body step back and the parts of the nervous system associated with openness, creativity, and connection step forward. Felt safety is not the same as physical safety. A person can be in a completely safe environment and not feel it. And a person can feel it in a difficult environment simply because someone is genuinely present with them. This is why listening matters more than most people account for. Not because it is polite, but because it changes the body of the person being listened to. It is, in a physiological sense, a gift, one that costs the giver nothing but attention, and gives the receiver something their nervous system may have been quietly waiting for. Along the coastlines of the world's temperate oceans, forests of kelp grow in columns of green-brown light, rising from the seafloor toward the surface in slow, swaying abundance. These kelp forests do not simply grow. They participate in the atmosphere above them. Phytoplankton and kelp at the ocean surface release compounds called dimethyl sulfide into the air above the water. These compounds, once airborne, oxidize and form particles around which water vapor condenses. Clouds form around them. Rain follows. A forest growing in the sea is helping to make the rain that falls on the land. The ocean participates in the weather of the mountains. The mountains participate in the rivers that reach the sea. Everything is connected across greater distances than it appears. The kindness done in one room very rarely stays in that room. It finds its way outward, in ways too indirect to trace, becoming part of the weather of someone else's day. In the 1970s, a researcher named Robert Zajonc proposed what he called the facial feedback hypothesis, the idea that the movements of the face can influence the emotional state of the person making them. It was controversial. Studies since have confirmed parts of it, challenged others, and refined the picture considerably. What holds across the research is this: the face is not simply a display of internal states. It participates in them. The muscles of expression are connected through nerves, through blood flow, through the vagus nerve's influence on the heart and gut, and to the very systems they appear to only report on. The human face has over 40 distinct muscles, capable of producing, according to some estimates, more than 10,000 distinct expressions. Each one involves a different configuration of tension and release, a different message sent along a different pathway. The face you carry through the world is not separate from the world you experience in it. They are in constant conversation, face to body to feeling, looping quietly, all day long, without your having to manage any of it. In Yellowstone, when wolves were reintroduced in 1995 after a 70-year absence, their return changed more than the elk population they hunted. It changed where the elk grazed, which changed which riverbanks eroded, which changed the course of rivers. Vegetation returned. Songbirds returned. Beavers returned. The rivers, over time, literally moved. This is called a trophic cascade, the way the presence or absence of one species ripples outward through an entire ecosystem in ways no one fully predicted. But this fact is not only about wolves or rivers. It is about presence, about how the arrival of something, or someone, changes the shape of the world around it in ways that are impossible to trace completely, impossible to anticipate, and often far larger than the original arrival seemed to warrant. When wolves were reunited with packmates after separation, observers documented greeting rituals, circling, pressing together, vocalizations that, in their intensity and duration, could only reasonably be described as expressions of joy. Reunion contains its own particular happiness, familiar as water, old as the pack. Right now, as you read this or hear this, there exists a version of your life that never happened, a path that branched away at some point before your memory begins, before you had language for what you wanted, before you knew that you were choosing anything at all. Small contingencies, a different city, a different year, a slightly altered circumstance, stir, and you would be someone else listening to something else in a different quiet. The probability of you, specifically, with your particular combination of experiences, memories, relationships, and the body you inhabit, is vanishingly small, not as a complement, as arithmetic. The variables involved in producing this specific configuration of a life are staggering, and yet here you are, not a more likely version, the actual one. The universe did not arrange itself with you in mind, but it did arrange itself in a way that made you possible. And then you happened, and now you are here, at this hour, in this quiet, which is itself a kind of astonishing thing to simply notice. The heart is not simply a pump that waits for instruction. Each cardiac muscle cell carries within it its own electrical rhythm, a spontaneous, self-generated pulse that does not require a signal from the brain to begin. When cardiac cells are placed together in a laboratory dish, they begin, independently, to beat. And then, slowly, they synchronize. Without instruction, without conductor, they find a shared rhythm simply by being near one another. This is called cardiac automaticity, and it is why the heart can continue beating even when its connection to the central nervous system is severed. The rhythm originates within the heart itself. The brain refines it, speeds it, slows it, but does not create it. The heart, in other words, has always had its own timing, its own quiet insistence on continuing. It was beating before you arrived into consciousness. It has maintained its agreement with life through every difficult season, every night of poor sleep, every year of uncertainty. It has never once required you to believe in it for it to keep going. That, at this hour, feels like something worth knowing. There is a species of jellyfish, Turritopsis dohrnii, found in the Mediterranean and in the waters off Japan, that responds to physical damage or extreme stress by reverting to an earlier stage of its life cycle. It becomes, biologically, young again. Not metaphorically. The adult form transforms back into a juvenile polyp, from which it can grow once more. Biologists call this transdifferentiation, the process by which one type of cell becomes a different type. It is extraordinarily rare. In most animals, it does not happen. In this jellyfish it is, apparently, a survival strategy. Scientists do not yet fully understand the mechanism. What triggers the reversion? What determines when it stops? Whether the organism carries any memory of what it was before, these remain open questions. But the image alone contains something worth sitting with quietly. A living creature, when the world becomes too much, finding a way back to an earlier form of itself. Not dying, not surrendering, simply becoming something that can begin again. Beginnings, it turns out, are not only for the young. There is a particular quality to music in a minor key, heard in a safe place, in a warm room, in a familiar quiet, through headphones in the dark, that is difficult to name. It feels like sadness, but it does not feel only like sadness. It feels like being understood by something that does not require explanation. Researchers studying the emotional responses to minor key music have found that people frequently describe the experience using words that contain both sorrow and comfort simultaneously. Bittersweet, tender, like being held by something melancholy. The brain, it appears, can receive sadness as a form of beauty when the context signals that it is safe to do so. This may be why people seek out sad music when they are sad, rather than avoiding it. Not to deepen the sadness, but because something in the music says this feeling has been felt before, by others, and they survived it, and they made something beautiful out of it, and now they are offering it to you. That is a form of companionship, quiet, old, and freely given. Roman roads were not simply efficient. They were, in many stretches, acts of consideration for the people who would walk them. Along many of the major routes of the ancient empire, trees, elms, poplars, plane trees were planted at regular intervals along the roadside, their canopies designed to meet overhead and form a tunnel of shade. Soldiers marching home from campaigns in distant provinces walked, in places, through corridors of green. The shade extended the hours during which travel was possible in summer heat. It reduced exhaustion. It made the long road home a little less punishing. Someone planned that. Someone thought ahead, not to the conquest, not to the logistics of supply lines, but to the body of a person walking, in the heat, toward home. Someone decided that comfort along the way was worth the effort of planting. Kindness that takes years to arrive at its destination is still kindness. The tree does not know who will rest in its shade. It grows anyway. On any clear night, wherever you are in the northern hemisphere, you can look up and see the same moon that has hung above every human life ever lived. The same face of it. The moon is tidally locked to the earth, which means it rotates at exactly the rate needed to always show us the same side. Every human who has ever looked up at night has seen exactly this surface. Ancient farmers used it to measure planting seasons. Sailors used it to navigate open ocean. Poets across every known language have addressed it directly, as if it might answer. Children have pointed at it from the arms of adults, who pointed at it from the arms of their own adults, stretching back across a chain of evenings too long to imagine. At this very moment, someone on the other side of the world is looking at exactly the same moon you will see tonight. They do not know you. You do not know them, but you are sharing, without arrangement, the oldest shared view in human history. The world is a lonelier story than it sometimes needs to be. There is a response that researchers have named aesthetic chills, a physical sensation that moves through the body in response to music, art, landscape, or human gesture that the person experiences as beautiful or profound. The skin prickles. The breath catches. The chest tightens in a way that is uncomfortable and welcome simultaneously. Approximately half of all people studied report experiencing aesthetic chills regularly. The other half report rarely or never experiencing them, and brain imaging studies suggest that those who experience them have stronger connections between the auditory cortex and regions associated with emotion and social processing. What causes this? Scientists are not fully certain. One theory is that aesthetic chills evolved as a response to social signals, voices raised together, sudden quiet after danger, and that music and art trigger this ancient circuitry by mimicking those patterns. To be moved by beauty, on this account, is to feel what your ancestors felt when the group survived something together. The shiver of relief, the permission, briefly, to feel that things are all right. A teaspoon of healthy soil contains more individual living organisms, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, archaea, than there are people on Earth. By several orders of magnitude, these organisms are not passive. They decompose organic matter, release nutrients, build soil structure, regulate water retention, and produce compounds that affect the health of the plants above them. Some of these compounds reach the air. One of them, a bacterium called Mycobacterium vaccae, when inhaled or absorbed through contact with soil, has been shown in preliminary studies to stimulate the production of serotonin in the human brain. Gardening, in other words, may literally make people happier through a mechanism built into the soil itself. The Earth has been making life possible for billions of years, and it is still, quietly, doing so, including in ways that affect whether the person crouching in their garden at the end of an afternoon feels, inexplicably, a little better than they expected. The ground beneath us has always been on our side. We are only beginning to understand how many ways. Across dozens of cultures and hundreds of studies, researchers have asked people, from subsistence farmers in rural Kenya to executives in Tokyo to teenagers in Sao Paulo, to describe what gives their lives meaning, what they would call happiness if asked to name it. The answers, adjusted for language and context, converge on three things with striking consistency: connection to other people, the sense of contributing something to a world larger than oneself, and a relationship to something, a practice, a belief, a purpose that extends beyond the individual life. Not wealth, not status, not comfort, though comfort matters when it is absent. But these three things, over and over, regardless of culture, regardless of circumstance. This is not a prescription. People come to these things in different ways, by different names, through different doors. But the convergence is worth sitting with. Across the enormous variety of human life on Earth, what feels like happiness tends to rhyme. Different verses. The same quiet song. There is a place called the Hadal Zone, the deepest trenches of the ocean, where no sunlight has ever reached, and the pressure would crush a human body instantly. Temperatures hover just above freezing. Food is scarce. By every ordinary measure, it is among the least hospitable environments on Earth, and it is full of living things. More than that, many of them make their own light. Bioluminescent creatures, fish, jellyfish, squid, crustaceans, produce their own cold glow through chemical reactions in their cells. In absolute darkness, miles beneath the surface of the sea, living things are quietly luminous. Scientists estimate that as many as 76% of deep-sea creatures produce bioluminescence. The deep ocean, it turns out, is not dark in the way we imagined. It is full of small, self-generated lights, invisible to any surface eye, glowing for reasons that are still not entirely understood: communication, camouflage, luring, or perhaps simply the byproduct of being alive. Light persists in the most unlikely places. This seems important to remember. When the body is in a state of ease, not excitement, not achievement, but genuine, resting ease, the autonomic nervous system shifts from its sympathetic mode, the one associated with alertness and preparation for action, into its parasympathetic mode. This is sometimes called rest and digest, in contrast to fight or flight. In parasympathetic mode, digestion improves. Blood vessels in the periphery dilate. The immune system conducts its maintenance and repair functions more efficiently. Inflammation markers decrease. Cellular repair processes that are suppressed during stress begin to run. The body, when it finally believes it is safe, uses the opportunity to fix things. Even as you rest right now, even if rest is the only thing you are doing, your body is not idle. It is attending to what was deferred. it is quietly catching up. Every moment of genuine ease is a gift to the body, not a luxury, not a reward for productivity, but a biological necessity being honored. Rest is not the absence of doing. It is one of the most important things a body can do. Every autumn, in the mountains of central Mexico, something arrives in the Oyamel fir forests that has traveled, in some cases, more than 4,000 kilometers to be there. Monarch butterflies, weightless, paper-thin, navigating by a solar compass in their antennae that is corrected by an internal circadian clock, find their way to the same groves their grandparents used, groves they have never themselves visited. The migration spans 4 generations. No single butterfly makes the full round trip. They pass the route forward, encoded in something science has not yet fully named, to descendants who will complete the journey their ancestors began. Researchers studying monarch navigation have found that the butterflies use the angle of the sun relative to the time of day, essentially a moving map, to orient themselves southward. On overcast days, they can still navigate using polarized light invisible to human eyes. What persists across generations that cannot be spoken, cannot be taught, cannot be remembered in any ordinary sense? The monarch carries it in its body. It knows where it is going without knowing how it knows. Some kinds of belonging are written somewhere deeper than memory. In a study conducted across multiple countries and cultural settings, researchers played recordings of water, a stream over stones, a gentle rain, a small waterfall, ocean waves on a quiet shore, to participants, and measured their physiological responses alongside their self-reported emotional states. Across cultures, running water ranked among the most universally calming sounds a human being can hear. Heart rate decreased. Skin conductance, a measure of arousal, fell. The sounds people described as most calming were not silence, but water in gentle, irregular motion. Why water? Scientists offer several explanations. The sound of water is spectrally similar to what is called pink noise, a type of background sound that masks sudden acoustic intrusions and allows the brain's threat detection systems to relax. There is also an evolutionary argument. The sound of running water meant water was nearby, and water meant survival. Whatever the reason, the body knows what running water means, and it softens toward it the way a clenched hand opens, slowly, when there is nothing left to hold against. There is a structure in the human brain that activates specifically and only when a person thinks about themselves in the future. Neuroscientists call it part of the default mode network, but what is striking is this: the same region also activates when a person thinks about another person. Not just any thought. The intimate mental act of imagining what someone else feels, wants, needs. The brain, it appears, uses the same neural machinery to think about your future self and to think about someone you care about. Future you and beloved other are processed at the neural level, in the same neighborhood. This has an unexpected implication. The kindness we extend to others may be, in some neurological sense, practice for the kindness we extend to ourselves across time. And the compassion we learn to offer ourselves may make us more capable of genuinely imagining another person's inner life. Empathy and self-care may not be opposites. They may be the same motion, aimed in different directions. In the vast ocean basins of the Pacific and Atlantic, whale song travels, not as metaphor, literally. Low-frequency vocalizations produced by humpback whales can travel hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles, through deep water channels, where the physics of sound propagation allow them to carry with unusual efficiency. And the songs change. Within a single breeding season, a new phrase or sequence will appear in the song of one whale and spread, passed from individual to individual, region to region, across an entire ocean basin. By the end of a season, whales that have never encountered one another may be singing the same new element. Scientists who study this, particularly researchers like Ellen Garland, who has tracked song change across the Pacific, and describe it as cultural transmission, not genetic, learned, spreading the way music spreads between humans heard, absorbed, repeated, carried forward. Whales have culture. They have music, and their music moves through the dark water the same way a song moves through a crowd, person to person, changed a little by each voice, arriving somewhere new. In a series of studies examining how physical memory, as the body's stored sense of past experience, affects present emotional states, researchers found something that initially seemed counterintuitive. Participants who were asked to vividly recall being held, comforted, or physically reassured in the past showed measurable decreases in cortisol, the primary stress hormone, comparable to those seen in participants who were actually being held in the present moment. The body, confronted with a sufficiently detailed memory of safety, partially responds as if the safety is current. The difference in cortisol reduction was meaningful but smaller than live contact. The memory was not as potent as the moment. But it was not nothing. It was a real, physiological event you carry with you, in your nervous system, every time you were truly comforted. Every time someone stayed. Every moment of genuine ease. They are not only memories in the emotional sense. They are, in some small and measurable way, still working in your body right now. The kindness shown to you years ago has not fully finished arriving. In maternity wards around the world, before any learning has occurred, before any cultural conditioning has had time to take hold, before language or preference or experience have shaped a single response, newborn infants laugh. Not immediately, but within weeks of birth, the characteristic vocalization of laughter, the repeated, rhythmic exhalation, the facial expression, the body movement appears. And it appears, in its basic form, across all cultures studied, in children born into widely different languages, different circumstances, different everything. Laughter is not learned. It is not a cultural product. It is something the species carries, the way it carries the capacity for grief, or the instinct to reach toward a face. It arrives already assembled, waiting only for something amusing to trigger it. Happiness, in at least one of its expressions, is not built. It is found. It was already there, at the very beginning, before the world had time to complicate anything. In 1977, NASA launched 2 spacecraft into the outer solar system. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 each carry a golden record, a 12-inch gold-plated copper disc containing sounds and images selected to represent life on Earth. Should either spacecraft ever be found by another intelligence, the sounds on the record include surf, wind, thunder, the songs of birds and whales, a mother's first words to her newborn child, music from dozens of cultures, and human laughter. Someone, a committee that included Carl Sagan, decided that if Earth were to send one message into the dark, laughter should be on it. Not an achievement, not a formula, not a monument. Laughter, the sound humans make when something delights them, when they are safe enough to be surprised, when the world, for a moment, is more than they expected in a good direction. Somewhere beyond the edge of the solar system, in interstellar space, human laughter is still traveling outward. It has been traveling for nearly 50 years. It will travel for millions more. There is a dog, somewhere right now, whose paws are moving gently in its sleep. Its eyes are still. Its breathing is slow and regular, but the legs are running, or attempting to, the muscles firing in quiet sequence, the body acting out something the brain is replaying. Dogs, like humans, experience REM sleep, the stage in which most vivid dreaming occurs. Their brainwave patterns during REM are structurally similar to human REM patterns. Researchers studying sleep in dogs believe they dream, and that what they dream is drawn from their waking experience running, playing, interacting with people they know. The dog is going somewhere in the dark, somewhere it loves, most likely. The body does not know it is only dreaming. It runs anyway, with the particular wholehearted commitment of a creature that has never learned to hold anything back, to love something so completely that the body pursues it even in sleep. This is not a small thing. It may be the animal version of devotion, present even in the dark, present even when no one is watching. A candle flame produces light in a very specific way. The wax vaporizes, the vapor ignites, and the resulting combustion releases photons across a range of wavelengths that the human eye perceives as warm, orange-gold light. It is not bright. By the measure of any modern light source, it is almost nothing, a handful of photons expanding outward into the dark. And yet, on a clear, dark night, with no competing light sources, a human eye with good vision can detect the light of a single candle flame from a distance of nearly 2 miles. Not because the eye is extraordinary, because darkness amplifies, because in the absence of noise, a signal that would otherwise be lost becomes findable. This is true of other things. Quiet makes small warmth visible. The gesture that goes unnoticed in a busy afternoon can illuminate an entire evening when it is the only light in the room. The soft word, the single moment of genuine attention. In the right kind of quiet, a little warmth goes a very long way. You contain, right now, oxygen that was produced by ancient cyanobacteria over 2 billion years ago and has cycled through the atmosphere, the ocean, and countless living bodies to arrive here. You contain carbon that was forged in the cores of stars that burned out before our sun existed. You contain iron, the iron in your hemoglobin, carrying oxygen through your blood as you read this, that was formed in the violent death of a massive star, a supernova, the shockwave of which may have helped trigger the formation of our solar system. You are not simply on the Earth. You are made of the Earth, and of the universe before the Earth. The boundary between you and the world is, at the level of atoms, not a boundary at all. It is a temporary arrangement of matter that the universe has made into something that can wonder about itself. For a few decades, these atoms hold together in this particular pattern, with this particular capacity for thought and feeling and awe, and then they return to the larger story they came from, to become part of something else. What an extraordinary parenthesis to be. There is a study, replicated across several different cultural settings, that found the following when people performed acts of kindness for strangers, people they would never see again, people who could offer nothing in return. The reward response in the giver's brain was, on average, stronger than the response produced by receiving an equivalent benefit for themselves. Not marginally stronger, meaningfully so. The nucleus accumbens, the region associated with reward and motivation, responded more robustly to giving than to getting, specifically when the giving was directed outward, towards someone unknown. This finding has been interpreted in various ways. Some researchers see it as evidence that the social brain evolved to value group welfare over individual benefit. Others see it as a simple byproduct of the cooperative structures that allowed early humans to survive. What it means practically is quieter than any of those explanations. It means that the moment of giving to a stranger, the split second of handing something across the gap between one life and another, is registered by the body as something deeply, specifically good. Not politely good, not virtuously good. Good the way food is good. Good the way warmth is good. Generosity, it turns out, is its own reward in the most literal sense the word allows. In Japan, the practice is called Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing. It does not mean hiking. It does not mean exercise. It means moving slowly through trees, without destination, allowing the senses to receive what the forest offers without agenda. Studies measuring the physiological effects of Shinrin-yoku have found that even short sessions, as little as 15 to 20 minutes, produce measurable reductions in cortisol, decreases in blood pressure, and increases in the activity of natural killer cells, a component of the immune system that targets damaged and abnormal cells. Part of the effect appears to come from phytoncides and volatile compounds released by trees as part of their own immune defense. When humans breathe forest air, they absorb these compounds, and the immune system responds as if it has received a useful signal. The trees are not trying to help. They are simply being trees, doing what trees do, releasing what they release, existing in their particular chemical relationship with the air around them. And the human body, walking slowly among them, receives it as medicine. The forest does not know it is healing anyone. It heals anyway. There is a class of psychological experience that researchers describe as a positively valenced surprise, a moment when something unexpected happens, and the unexpectedness is pleasant rather than threatening. The thing that wasn't anticipated turns out to be good. In the instant of such a surprise, something measurable happens in the brain. The default mode network, the part of the mind that runs the ongoing internal monologue, the narrative of self, the planning and ruminating and self-monitoring that briefly quiets. Activity drops. The inner voice pauses. For a moment, the mind is simply present, not constructing, not evaluating, just receiving. These moments are brief, seconds, usually, but their effect on mood can persist. Studies of what researchers call micro-moments of positivity have found that brief interruptions to ordinary rumination, even very small ones, can shift the emotional tone of an entire subsequent hour. A small delight, landing unexpectedly, creates a clearing in the mind. And in that clearing, something other than worry gets a little room to exist. On the 24th of December, the astronaut, William Anders, orbiting the moon aboard Apollo 8, looked out the window of the spacecraft and saw the Earth rising above the lunar horizon. He reached for his camera and took a photograph. It became one of the most widely reproduced images in history, a small blue sphere hanging in absolute black, partly illuminated, utterly alone, and breathtaking. The Earth, seen from that distance, is smaller than a thumbnail held at arm's length. On that thumbnail, every mountain range, every ocean, every forest and city and river, every person who ever lived, every act of cruelty ever committed, every act of kindness, every war, every poem, every meal eaten with someone loved, every night someone lay awake and wondered if things would be all right. All of it, on something smaller than a thumbnail. The photograph is called Earthrise. Many of the astronauts who saw the Earth from space reported a shift in perspective they found difficult to describe, a feeling of protectiveness, of fragility, of the arbitrariness of every human division. Carl Sagan called the Earth a pale blue dot, and wrote that it underscores the responsibility to deal more kindly with one another. Everything that has ever mattered to any human happened in one small, irreplaceable place. As you grow quieter inside, as the breath slows and the body settles into whatever surface holds it, something shifts in the perception of time. This is not imagination. Researchers studying the relationship between arousal states and time perception have consistently found that as physiological arousal decreases, subjective time expands. The same 10 minutes can feel like 4 at high arousal, or like 20 in deep rest. The nervous system at ease processes the world at a different pace than the nervous system on alert. It notices more. It lingers longer on each moment before moving to the next. This is why a quiet evening can feel rich in a way that a busy afternoon does not, even if fewer things happened in it. Stillness is not the absence of experience. It is a different relationship to experience, one in which each moment is allowed to be fully itself before the next one arrives. The quieter you become, the more time you seem to have. Not metaphorically. Perceptually, the body that rests inhabits a slightly slower world, and the moments inside it are correspondingly larger. In a hive of tens of thousands of individuals, a single scout bee departs, explores, and returns. And in the darkness of the hive, in the absence of light, navigating entirely by touch and by the vibration of other bees' bodies, it performs a waggle dance that communicates not only direction and distance, but quality. The duration and vigor of the dance encode how good the source is. The bee does not simply report. It advocates. It describes the resource with an enthusiasm calibrated to its value. And other bees respond to that calibration, choosing, from among several scouts all dancing at once, which source to commit to based on the relative passion of the performance. What the hive is doing, through this process, is something like deliberation. Many individuals bringing back partial information, the group integrating it, a collective decision emerging from the interaction, and the scout returning to the dark hive after finding something good, dance, fully, specifically, with everything it knows, as if the telling of it is part of the finding, as if the information is not complete until it has been shared. A phenomenon called social contagion of happiness has been studied in longitudinal data, tracking tens of thousands of people across networks of relationships over decades. The finding is this: the happiness of a person is statistically associated with the happiness of people they have never met, friends of friends of friends, 3 degrees of separation away, people whose names they do not know. Happiness, measured across large social networks, moves the way an influence moves. Not instantly, not through direct contact alone, but through the small behavioral changes that happiness produces, the extra warmth in a voice, the slightly more generous gesture, the moment of eye contact held a little longer, and the way those changes ripple outward into other people's nervous systems and slightly alter what they carry into their next interaction. You are not only shaped by the happiness of the people you know, you shape the happiness of people you will never meet, through a chain of small influences too indirect to trace. The warmth you cultivate tonight may, by some path too circuitous to follow, arrive in someone else's life as something they needed. A river, given time, centuries, if needed, will always find a gentler path. It does not choose to. It does not know there is a gentler path. But water, moving under gravity, naturally seeks the route of least resistance. And in doing so, it cuts channels into the landscape, removes obstacles, deposits what it carries in the places where the current slows. The river is not passive. Over time, it transforms its own environment. It becomes the reason for the valley it appears to merely flow through. There is a version of ease that works like this. Not the ease of avoiding difficulty, but the ease of finding, over time, the path that fits, the groove that takes shape not from a single decision but from many small, persistent movements in the same general direction. A life, over time, finding its own river. Not forced, not sudden, just water, and gravity, and patience, and enough time. In a large-scale review of happiness research published in the early 2000s and updated in subsequent decades, researchers examined what factors predict how happy a person reports being. They found that life circumstances and income above a baseline of comfort, geography, marital status, even health within a broad range, account for a surprisingly small percentage of the variation in reported happiness between people. A larger portion of the variation could not be attributed to circumstances at all. It appeared to be related to what researchers called intentional activity, what a person does, repeatedly, with their attention, their time, their habits of mind, not what happens to them, what they return to, what they practice noticing, what they choose, again and again, to tend. This is not a dismissal of suffering or circumstance. Difficult circumstances are real and matter enormously. But the research suggests that within whatever circumstances a person inhabits, there remains meaningful room for the quality of attention they bring to their own life. Happiness is not only something that arrives, it is also, partly, something that is cultivated, slowly, quietly, in the ordinary texture of ordinary days. In the deep trenches of the ocean there is no sun, no photosynthesis, no energy from above reaching the creatures that live there. And so life found another way. At hydrothermal vents, cracks in the ocean floor, where superheated water, rich in minerals, pushes upward from the Earth's interior, entire ecosystems exist. Tube worms 4 feet long, ghostly white crabs, communities of organisms drawing their energy not from sunlight but from the chemistry of the Earth itself. The discovery of these communities in the late 1970s changed biology permanently. Life, it turned out, does not require the sun. It requires only a source of energy, any source, and enough time to find it. This has implications beyond biology. It suggests that life, given the right conditions, will find a way into even the most unlikely places. That the impulse toward living is not fragile. That existence is, by some measure, persistent in ways that exceed our expectations of it. Wherever there is a crack in the darkness and a little warmth coming through, something has already moved in and made a home. There is no universal agreement among scientists about what happiness is. This is not a failure of research. Thousands of papers have been written, dozens of frameworks proposed, entire careers devoted to the question, and still, the definitions multiply: hedonic happiness, eudaimonic happiness, subjective well-being, flourishing, positive effect, because the thing being defined keeps exceeding every container built to hold it. The ancient Greeks had eudaimonia, living in accordance with one's deepest nature. The Buddhists have sukha, a contentment not dependent on circumstance. The Danes have hygge, the particular warmth of togetherness on a cold evening. None of these words translates exactly into any other language. None of them is quite the same thing. What this means is not that happiness is unknowable. It means that it is genuinely plural, that it wears different faces in different lives, at different hours, in different seasons of the same life. There is no single destination called happiness. There is a country with many rooms. And because no scientist has yet drawn the complete map, The defining, finally, essentially, belongs to the person standing inside their own life, feeling their way toward what fits. You are the only authority on what it feels like from the inside. That has always been true. Science simply confirms it. Right now, as you breathe out, the air leaving your lungs contains water vapor. That vapor will rise. It will join the atmosphere, the same thin layer of air that has been cycling around this planet for billions of years, moving from lungs to sky to cloud to rain to river to sea and back again. The water molecules in your exhaled breath will, in time, become part of a cloud. The cloud will become rain. The rain will become a river, or a root, or the ocean. You are not separate from this cycle. You are inside it. Every breath you release becomes, eventually, part of the weather of somewhere else, part of the sky above a mountain you will never visit, part of the rain that falls on a forest that does not know your name. You do not have to do anything extraordinary to participate in something larger than yourself. You are already doing it. With every breath, without trying, without knowing. The boundary between you and the world, at the level of water and air, is not a boundary at all. It is a meeting place, and you are always, quietly, in the middle of it, in Antarctica, in the depths of winter, in temperatures that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. Emperor penguins pressed together in huddles of tens of thousands. The ones at the center are warm, warmer than comfortable. The ones at the edge are cold. And so the huddle moves. Slowly, continuously. Those at the edge press inward, and those at the center are gently displaced outward. The entire mass rotates, almost like a breathing thing, ensuring that no individual remains at the coldest position for long. No penguin directs this. No signal is given. No leader decides when the rotation should happen. The movement emerges from the simple pressure of each bird seeking a little more warmth, and the collective result is that the warmth is distributed, over time, more or less equally across the whole group. The huddle is not a decision. It is a consequence of thousands of small, self-interested movements that together produce something that looks, from the outside, remarkably like generosity. Sometimes the most equitable arrangements are not the ones that were designed. They are the ones that emerge when everyone is simply allowed to move toward what they need. The brain cannot fully distinguish between a deeply imagined kind act and one it actually performed. When a person vividly imagines comforting someone who is struggling, the specific words, the tone of voice, the gesture, the neural regions associated with social reward activate, not as strongly as they would if the act were real, but not as weakly as if the imagining were merely abstract. The brain treats the simulation as partially real, because for the brain, simulation and experience share the same architecture. This means that the kindness rehearsed in the mind is not wasted, the letter composed but never sent, the apology imagined but not yet spoken, the generosity pictured but not yet enacted. These leave traces. They warm the pathways they travel through. They make the next real act of kindness slightly more available, slightly more natural, slightly less effortful. The mind that regularly imagines warmth becomes, over time, a warmer mind. Not because imagination is a substitute for action, but because the brain that practices something, even inwardly, even quietly, even alone, is genuinely practicing. What you rehearse in the quiet of your own mind is not nothing. It is the slow preparation of a self that will one day act without having to think about it. Across every culture that has been studied, from the highland forests of Papua New Guinea to the cities of Western Europe, to the rural communities of sub-Saharan Africa, music played at a slow tempo is heard as calmer than music played at a fast one. Not because people have been told this, not because they learned it from their culture. The response appears beneath learning, beneath preference, beneath the particular musical tradition a person was raised in. Something in the body takes its cues from the tempo of the sound moving through the air around it. A slow pulse in the music finds something in the listener's own rhythm and invites it to follow. The heart slows. The breath deepens. The pace of thought becomes less urgent. The body, without being instructed, begins to move at the speed of the music, because the body has always been in conversation with sound, long before it had a language to describe the conversation. Music does not only express rest, it produces it. The slow piece is not simply describing a quieter world, it is, in some meaningful measure, creating one. Inside the body of anyone who is listening. Somewhere, right now, a piece of music is making someone's shoulders drop, their jaw unclench, their breathing slow. Not because they decided to relax, because the music decided first. The word happy descends through Middle English from an Old Norse root, hap, meaning luck, fortune, the thing that falls upon you from outside. The same root lives in, perhaps, the thing that might happen. In happenstance, what occurs by chance. In mishap, luck gone wrong. For the people who first used these words, happiness was not something pursued or cultivated or chosen. It was something the world did to you, something that arrived, or didn't, beyond your control or deserving. This was, for centuries, the dominant understanding. Happiness as weather, as the disposition of fortune, as something external, landing on a life from above. And then the understanding began to shift, slowly, across centuries of observation. Enough people noticed that some of the most fortunate were not the happiest, and some of the least fortunate were, and that the difference lay somewhere the word luck could not reach. Somewhere inside. Somewhere that had more to do with how a person met the world than what the world handed them. The language is still catching up to what it means. Perhaps it always will be. And yet, here, in the quiet, with the day receding and the body settling, it can also feel like something that was always already yours. Not arrived at, not earned, not lucky or unlucky or granted by any external force. Just present, the way warmth is present in a room that has been lived in, not because someone placed it there deliberately, but because living happened here. And warmth is what living leaves behind. There are moments, small, unremarkable, occurring without announcement, when happiness is not something a person reaches for. It is simply what is happening. The cup held with both hands, the familiar sound from the next room, the weight of a body that has been asked nothing more of it, for this 1 hour, than to rest. These moments do not announce themselves as significant. They do not feel, while they are happening, like the ones worth remembering. And yet, when people are asked in study after study to describe the times they felt most alive, most at peace, most like themselves, they return not to the large events, but to exactly these, the quiet ones, the ones that weren't trying to be anything, the ones that simply were. Every year, when the sunflower reaches maturity, it stops turning. While it was young and growing, it tracked the sun, driven by the differential accumulation of growth hormones on its shaded side, bending toward the light through the long hours of each day. But when growth slows and the stem strengthens, the tracking ceases. The flower holds, permanently, facing east, toward the morning, toward the place where the light begins. Researchers studying this discovered that east-facing flowers warm faster at dawn. Their dark centers absorb the first sunlight before anything else in the field has warmed. And bees, cold-blooded, preferring warm surfaces, to arrive at east-facing flowers in far greater numbers than they do at flowers fixed in any other direction. The sunflower spent its entire youth in motion, following the light. And at the end of that youth, it stopped. It held a position. It became something that the morning could find, and something that the bees could count on. There is a version of maturity that looks like this: not the loss of movement, but the arrival at a place worth staying. Not stillness as absence, but stillness as offering. The long turning, finally, becoming something that others can be warmed by. There is a feeling that researchers have given the name elevation. It is not the same as happiness, not the same as admiration, or inspiration, or simple pleasure. It is the specific, warm, lifting sensation that arrives when a person witnesses an act of genuine generosity or moral beauty, a stranger helping someone who fell, an unremarkable person doing something quietly extraordinary, a moment of grace where nothing required it. The psychologist Jonathan Haidt, who first described elevation as a distinct emotional state, found that it produces a cluster of physical sensations: warmth in the chest, a feeling of opening in the throat, a sudden and unasked for impulse to be better, to reach toward others, to do something, to give something, and it spreads. People who experience elevation are more likely, in the hours that follow, to act generously themselves and toward strangers they will never see again, without expectation of return. The witnessed kindness becomes, by some internal alchemy, a kindness enacted. This means that every genuine act of generosity, witnessed by even one other person, plants something in that witness that may flower later, in a completely different life, in a completely different room. The original kindness is not only its own effect, it is the beginning of a chain too long and too indirect to follow. The world is being quietly improved, right now, by the downstream warmth of acts of goodness that happened weeks ago in rooms no one is thinking about anymore. Somewhere in the early hours after birth, before language, before memory, before experience has had time to build any of its structures, a newborn human turns toward a face. Not toward light, though light is present. Not toward sound, though the room is full of it. Toward the pattern, two darker regions above, one below, in the configuration of eyes and a mouth. Researchers have found that infants, only hours old, will track a face-shaped stimulus further, longer, and with more sustained attention than any other visual pattern of equivalent complexity and contrast. Not because they have been taught, not because they recognize anyone yet, but because the human brain arrives in the world already tuned, already calibrated, in its very first hours of seeing, to the frequency of other human faces. We do not learn to need each other. We are built needing each other, from the very first moment of consciousness. The hunger for faces is present before the faces themselves have been catalogued and named and loved. This is what makes loneliness so specifically painful. Not simply the absence of company, but the frustration of something the nervous system was organized, from the very beginning, to seek. And it is what makes being truly seen, even briefly, even by someone we barely know, so disproportionately nourishing. The oldest appetite in the body, finding what it has always been looking for. Saturn's moon Enceladus is small, roughly the size of the United Kingdom, orbiting nearly 1 billion miles from the Sun. Its surface is covered in ice, so white, so perfectly reflective, that it returns almost all the sunlight that reaches it, absorbing almost none. As a result, Enceladus shines brighter than nearly anything else in the vicinity of Saturn. Not because it generates its own light, not because it is close to the source, but because it holds nothing back when light arrives. It receives and returns with extraordinary completeness. There is something worth sitting with in that image. A small, cold world, doing nothing dramatic, simply reflecting, simply giving back, as fully as it can, whatever reaches it. Sometimes the most luminous thing in a room is not the one producing light. It is the one that has learned to waste none of what arrives at it. The one that receives fully and returns fully, and in doing so, becomes the brightest thing anyone can see. Right now, in whatever position your body has settled into, in whatever chair, in whatever bed, in whatever corner of the world you have made yours for this hour, something in you already knows how to rest. It has always known. The body's parasympathetic nervous system does not need to be taught to activate. It needs only permission. It waits, always, for the signal that the vigilance can stop for now and that the door is closed, that nothing is required of you in this moment. The difficulty, for many people, is not learning to rest. It is learning to believe, even temporarily, that resting is allowed, that the self does not need to be maintained like a fire that will go out without constant tending, that the will not collapse in the hours of not doing. The body has been patient with you. It has waited through the long days and the longer worries. It has kept going through every season that seemed like too much. And it is waiting now, not impatiently, not with judgment, for you to set something down. Not all of it, not forever, just enough, for now, to let it do what it has always known how to do. You don't have to earn this. You only have to allow it. Across decades of research, one finding about sleep and purpose has appeared with enough consistency to be trusted people who feel that their lives are meaningful, who sense that what they do matters, that they belong to something larger than themselves, to sleep more deeply and wake more easily than those who do not. Not because their lives are easier, not because they have fewer problems or less weight to carry, but because the nervous system at rest requires a particular kind of safety, not physical safety, but something quieter and deeper. The sense that one's presence in the world is not arbitrary, that there is a reason to return to the morning. Purpose, it turns out, is not only something that moves a person through the day, it is something that allows the body to truly stop at night, to release its vigilance, to hand the hours over to the dark without holding anything back. The most restful sleep may not come from exhaustion. It may come from meaning, from the body knowing, somewhere beneath thought, that tomorrow is worth waking for. The Siachen Glacier, high in the Karakoram Mountains, moves at roughly 1 foot per day. By any human measure, this is barely motion at all. Slower than a sleeping child's breathing seems slow. A person standing on it would feel nothing move. And yet, over thousands of years, this glacier has carved valleys, redirected rivers, and shaped the faces of mountains that will be standing long after every human structure on Earth has returned to dust. There is a kind of change that does not look like change while it is happening. That moves beneath the threshold of perception, accumulating quietly, day by day, year by year, decade by decade, until one morning the landscape is simply different, and no single moment can be named as the moment it changed. Patience, practiced long enough, becomes geology. The persistent thing and the permanent thing are very often the same thing, seen from different distances in time. What is moving in you right now, slowly, beneath notice, in the direction of something better? You may already be shaping something you cannot yet see. Happiness, studied across long spans of time and large populations, turns out to be surprisingly resistant to prediction by circumstance. Lottery winners, 1 year after their windfall, report happiness levels not significantly higher than before. People who have experienced serious physical injury, 1 year after the event, report happiness levels not significantly lower than before. The mind adapts, upward and downward, with a consistency that has surprised even the researchers who documented it. What this suggests is not that circumstances don't matter. They do, especially at the extremes. Poverty, isolation, and illness cause real suffering. But within the broad range of ordinary human life, the gap between one person's circumstances and another's explains far less of the difference in their happiness than intuition would predict. What explains more is what a person returns to, what they notice habitually, what they have learned, slowly and often without realizing it, to see. Happiness is not well predicted by what happens to a person. It is more strongly shaped by where their attention goes when nothing in particular is happening, by the quality of their ordinary looking, in the texture of their ordinary days. In the shallow waters of a coral reef, the smallest animal is doing something that will outlast every building a human being has ever constructed. Coral polyps, each one an animal no larger than a pinhead, secrete a calcium carbonate skeleton around themselves across a lifetime measured in years. They do this without awareness of what they are building, without knowledge of the reef taking shape around them, without any view of the whole. And yet, the Great Barrier Reef, 300 kilometers long, visible from space, one of the most complex ecosystems on Earth, was built entirely this way. No architect, no blueprint, no single polyp with a vision of the finished thing, just the steady, faithful, ordinary work of small creatures doing what small creatures do, generation after generation, each one adding its fraction to something none of them could see. Most of what endures is built this way, not by grand gestures or singular acts of will, by the patient accumulation of small, faithful, ordinary things, each one too modest to seem significant, all of them together becoming something that can be seen from space. What you do consistently, quietly, without knowing the full shape of what you are building, to maybe larger than you think. The breath you are taking right now has been breathed before. Not metaphorically. The atmosphere is a closed system. The oxygen molecules moving through your lungs at this moment have passed through the bodies of creatures that lived before the first fish left the sea, through ancient ferns, through the slow respiration of dinosaurs, through the lungs of every human who ever lay awake in the dark and wondered if things would be all right. The air is not new. It is borrowed, passing through one living thing after another across billions of years, changed a little by each body that receives it, returned to the world, taken up again. You are not separate from this long chain of breathing. You are the current link in it. And when you exhale, you return what you borrowed, slightly changed, slightly warmer, to the same air that will one day move through lungs that do not yet exist. To breathe is to participate in something very old, older than memory, older than language, older than any human understanding of what breathing is. The body knows this, even when the mind does not. A scientific study found that people who regularly experience small moments of awe, standing at the edge of something vast, looking up at an enormous sky, watching a murmuration of starlings move like a single liquid thing, report measurable changes in how they move through the world afterward. They describe feeling more patient, more generous, more willing to give their time to others, more likely to report that their own personal concerns feel, temporarily, less urgent. Not because those concerns disappeared, but because something larger briefly occupied the foreground of their attention, and the concerns found their actual size beside it. The researchers measuring this found physical correlates as well. Cytokines, proteins associated with inflammation and chronic stress, decreased after experiences of awe. The body, it seems, uses the encounter with vastness as an opportunity to repair something it had been deferring. The universe is not only where we came from, in certain quantities, encountered in certain ways. It is also medicine. The encounter with something much larger than yourself is not humbling in the diminishing sense. It is relieving. For a moment, you are not the largest thing in the room, and something in the body is deeply, quietly grateful for the rest. Trees in a forest, when one among them is damaged, struck by lightning, attacked by insects, weakened by drought, sometimes receive something unexpected from their neighbors. Through the mycorrhizal networks woven between their roots, neighboring trees have been observed to increase the flow of carbon and nutrients toward the struggling tree. Not all trees, not always, but the behavior has been documented with enough consistency by researchers, including Suzanne Simard, to suggest that it is not accidental. The trees are not choosing to help. There is no decision being made, but the network through which they are all connected responds to the signal of need, and something flows toward it. A forest is not a collection of competing individuals. It is something more like a community, ancient, silent, operating by rules too slow for any single lifetime to observe in full. And in that community, when something struggles, the network does not ignore it. Something moves toward the place of need. Care, it turns out, does not require consciousness to occur. It only requires connection. The speed at which sadness travels through the human nervous system, the electrochemical cascade that carries grief from its origin in the body to its registration in the brain, is nearly identical to the speed at which happiness travels. The pathways are shared. The velocity is the same. Sorrow and joy move through the same remarkable infrastructure of nerves, at the same speed, toward the same destinations. What differs is not the mechanism. It is the chemistry, the particular constellation of neurotransmitters that color the signal as it moves. The pathway that carries grief is the same pathway that carries joy. The capacity for one is inseparable, neurologically, from the capacity for the other. This is why the people who feel happiness most deeply are often the same people who feel sorrow most deeply. The sensitivity is not divided between the two. It is shared by both. The same openness that allows a person to be moved by beauty is the openness that allows them to be moved by loss. To feel things fully is not a vulnerability. It is an instrument, and an instrument capable of the full range is not weaker than one that plays only the comfortable notes. It is simply capable of more music. At the very edge of the observable universe, 46 billion light-years away, at the limit of what any telescope will ever reach, there are galaxies moving away from us faster than light itself travels. Not because anything exceeds the speed of light, but because the space between us and them is expanding, and at that distance, the expansion itself outpaces the light trying to cross it. The light from those galaxies is traveling toward us right now. It will never arrive. The distance is growing faster than the message can cross it, which means there is beauty in the universe we will never see. Galaxies full of stars, possibly full of worlds, full of whatever the universe has arranged in those unimaginable distances, and none of it will ever reach us. It exists, completely, beyond any possibility of our knowing it. There is something worth sitting with in this, not with despair, but with a kind of quiet release. The universe does not owe us access to all of it. The existence of beauty beyond our reach does not diminish the beauty that does reach us. If anything, it expands something, the knowledge that wonder is larger than any single capacity to witness it, that the world exceeds every eye turned toward it, that there is more goodness in existence than can ever be received. You do not have to see everything for it to matter that it is there. And you, here, in whatever quiet you have found tonight, do not have to hold all of it. You do not have to understand the full distance. You do not have to account for all the beauty you will never see, all the lives you will never know, all the worlds spinning in the dark beyond the reach of any light you will ever stand in. You are not required to contain the universe in order to belong to it. It is enough to be here, in this particular corner of existence, in this body, on this evening, in this small and specific life that is yours and no one else's. The universe is vast beyond comprehension, and somewhere inside that vastness, you paused. You grew still. You let something quiet arrive. That is not a small thing. In a cosmos defined by motion and distance and the relentless expansion of everything away from everything else, you held still for a moment and listened. That, too, is a way of being part of it. Nostalgia was once classified as a medical disorder. The Swiss physician Johannes Hofer coined the term in 1688 to describe what he observed in soldiers serving far from home, a longing so intense it produced physical symptoms: melancholy, insomnia, loss of appetite, a sickness made entirely of missing. For 2 centuries it remained a diagnosis, something to be treated, a weakness of the homesick mind, a failure to adapt, an unhealthy attachment to what was gone. Then the understanding shifted. Researchers studying nostalgia in the late 20th century found something unexpected. Nostalgia, experienced in moderate amounts, serves a function. It increases feelings of social connectedness. It raises self-esteem. It buffers the body against loneliness. It makes people feel that their lives have been meaningful, that what they lived was worth living, that the past they carry was real and warm and theirs. The brain, when it returns to a warm memory, is not simply escaping the present. It is reminding itself of something important, that it has loved things, that it has been loved, that it has already survived seasons that seemed, while they were happening, unlikely to end. Nostalgia is not weakness. It is the mind looking back over its shoulder and finding, to its own quiet relief, that there was something worth looking back at, that the life lived was not nothing. You have already survived everything that felt unsurvivable. The longing you feel for the good that has passed is simply your nervous system knowing this and taking a moment to be grateful for it. A bowhead whale discovered in the Arctic in the early 2000s carried embedded in its blubber a fragment of a harpoon, a type last manufactured in the 1880s. Based on this and other biological indicators, researchers estimated the whale's age at between 115 and 130 years at the time of discovery. Other bowhead whales, examined through different dating methods, have been estimated at over 200 years of age. A 200-year-old bowhead whale was alive when Napoleon was still alive. It was alive before the first photograph was taken, before the first railway was laid, before the telegraph or the telephone or the electric light. It has surfaced through Arctic water into a world that has transformed in its lifetime, beyond any reasonable expectation of continuity, and it has continued, quietly, without needing to understand any of it. The whale does not know what has changed above the waterline. It knows the cold water and the sound of other whales and the slow, deep rhythm of a life measured in centuries. Some things simply persist, long and quietly, and without requiring the world around them to remain recognizable. There is a kind of endurance that is not stubborn or effortful, that is simply the nature of the creature, continuing because continuing is what it does. That kind of persistence is available to more things than we usually credit. Researchers studying the conditions that allow the nervous system to fully release into rest have identified 3 sensory cues, when present together, reliably signal to the body that it is safe to let go. Slow sound and music at a gentle tempo, or the absence of sudden noise, or the soft irregularity of rain. Dim, warm light, the long wavelength amber of late afternoon or candlelight. Light that does not suppress melatonin. Light that the body has learned to read as evening. And the smell of something familiar, something encountered often enough in safe contexts that the nervous system has filed it under home. A particular tea, a fabric, a room that has been slept in enough times to carry its own reassurance. The nervous system is not convinced by argument. It does not relax because it has been told there is nothing to fear. It relaxes when it receives the signals it has learned, over a lifetime, to trust. The body responds to evidence, not instruction. And these 3 cues, sound, light, scent, are among the oldest and most trusted evidence the body knows. They have likely been present around sleeping humans since before fire was controlled. The low sound of a dying fire, the dim glow of embers, the smell of something familiar and safe. The cues are ancient. The nervous system that responds to them is older still. Comfort is not indulgence. It is the body being given the language it speaks. And when it receives that language, it knows exactly what to say back. The word companion arrives in English from the Latin roots .com, together, and panis, bread, one who shares bread. A companion, at the origin of the word, is simply someone you eat with. For most of human history, to share a meal was not a casual act. It was a declaration of something. To eat beside another person was to be temporarily vulnerable with them, hands occupied, attention divided, the body engaged in its most basic and animal work. In many ancient cultures, sharing food created an obligation, a bond that the end of the meal did not dissolve. To have eaten with someone was to have trusted them with something real. The word has traveled a long way from its origin. We use companion now to mean anyone we move through the world alongside, a friend, a partner, a fellow traveler on a long road. But the original meaning has not entirely disappeared. It lives, still, in every shared meal, in every table set for more than one, in the particular quality of an evening when food is passed between people who are glad to be in the same room. Something in the body knows, even now, that to eat with someone is to have chosen, however briefly, to be unguarded in the same moment. The most ordinary meal, eaten with someone you love, is performing something much older than either of you remembers. Quietly. Every time. And every meal shared with another person carries that ancient signal, even now. Even the hurried ones. Even the imperfect ones. The ones where the food went cold, or someone said something clumsy, or the conversation never quite found its footing. Even those carry something. The choosing to be in the same place. The agreeing, without stating it, to be present to the same hour. There is a study of social eating, meals taken alone versus meals taken with others, that found people who regularly eat with other people report higher levels of satisfaction, trust, and sense of belonging than those who eat primarily alone. The effect held across cultures, across income levels, across the enormous variety of what eating together looks like in different parts of the world. The table is one of the oldest human technologies, not because it holds the food, but because it holds the people. It gives them a reason to be in the same place, at the same time, with their hands open and their guard lowered, and the simple animal fact of hunger in common. To eat together is to remember, without words, that you are the same kind of creature, that the same things sustain you, that the distance between one life and another is, at the table, briefly smaller than it is anywhere else. Across every methodology, across every culture, across every decade of the long study of what makes a human life go well, one finding returns with a consistency that has come to feel less like a discovery and more like a confirmation of something already known. Relationships. The quality of a person's close connections to whether they feel truly known, whether they can rely on others, whether there is at least one person in their life they do not have to perform for, predicts their well-being more reliably than almost any other variable that can be measured. The Harvard study of adult development followed its participants for over 80 years. The men who reported the warmest relationships in midlife were the healthiest in old age, physically, cognitively, emotionally. The quality of their connections at 50 predicted how they would be at 80 better than their cholesterol levels, their income, or their professional achievement, not what they had, who they were held by. This is not a comfortable finding for a culture that measures success in individual terms. It is not efficient or scalable or easily optimized. It cannot be achieved alone, or quickly, or by any effort that does not involve making oneself genuinely available to another person across time. But it is, as far as the longest science can tell, the closest thing to an answer that the question of happiness has produced. And it has been the answer every time anyone has looked carefully enough and long enough to see it. A single neuron in the human brain can connect to thousands of others through structures called synapses. Across 86 billion neurons, the number of possible configurations of those connections, the number of ways a human brain could, in theory, be wired, exceeds the number of atoms in the observable universe. No two brains have ever been identical. Not twins. Not any two people who have ever lived, across the entire history of the species. The particular pattern of your neural connections, shaped by genetics and experience, and every book read, every grief carried, every morning of ordinary life that accumulated into the specific person you became, is singular. It has never existed before. It will not exist again. This means that whatever you understand about beauty, about loss, about the particular quality of light in a place you have loved, exists in a configuration that is entirely your own. The things you have noticed that no one else seemed to notice in quite the same way. The specific texture of your attention, the precise shape of what moves you. These are not incidental details of a life. They are the unrepeatable contribution of one particular mind, alive in one particular body, at one particular moment in the history of everything. You are not a version of something. You are a specific thing, unrepeated. And whatever you have seen it in a way that no one else has, or ever will. That seeing was worth having. The world is different, in ways too small to trace, for the fact that it was seen by you. Every civilization that has left records looked up at the same night sky and found shapes in it. Different shapes, different stories, different names for the same stars, in languages that could not speak to one another, in cultures separated by oceans and centuries and every imaginable difference of custom and belief. The ancient Greeks saw Orion the hunter. The Aboriginal Australians saw the emu in the sky, traced not by the stars themselves, but by the dark spaces between them, the vast clouds of dust that absorb the light. The people of the Marshall Islands saw canoes. The ancient Chinese saw the Silver River. The Lakota saw a great road of spirits. Different skies, different stories. The same 5,000 stars. Something in the human mind cannot rest in randomness. It reaches for pattern. It draws lines between lights and calls what it finds a story worth telling, worth naming, worth passing to the next generation who will look up at the same sky and do the same thing. The stars did not ask to be named. The constellations are entirely ours, and the human need for meaning, projected upward into the dark, finding shapes because the mind that looks for shapes will always find them. Every culture that has ever existed has done this. Looked up, reached into the dark with the same irrepressible gesture, drew lines, made meaning, and called what they found a reason to keep looking. Every night, in the hours of deep sleep, the brain does something that has no precise equivalent in waking life. It replays, not randomly, selectively, carefully, with something that functions almost like editorial judgment. The hippocampus rehearses the experiences of the day and of older, unresolved memories. But the neurochemical environment of REM sleep is different from waking in one specific and consequential way. The levels of norepinephrine, the stress chemical most associated with the sharp, painful edge of difficult experience, that drop nearly to zero. The memory is replayed. The emotion is not fully re-experienced. The brain, working in the dark, is quietly separating the information from the injury, keeping what was true, softening what was only pain, filing the difficult thing into a shape that is, by morning, slightly more possible to carry. This is why the same memory can feel different after a night of real sleep. Not because anything changed, but because the brain, in the hours of darkness, did something careful with it, something tender, something it could only do when the world stopped asking anything of it. Sleep is not where you go when consciousness ends. It is where the mind goes to do its most patient work, the work of turning what happened into something that can be lived with, the work it cannot do while the world is watching. Every day, as the sun rises over the ocean, something begins to move. Billions of creatures, zooplankton, small fish, squid, jellyfish, and hundreds of species with no common name, begin to rise through the water column, ascending hundreds of meters toward the surface and the light. And every evening, as darkness falls, they sink again, retreating to the cold and the dark where predators are fewer and the pressure is immense. This is the dial vertical migration. It is the largest migration on Earth, larger than any movement of land animals, larger than any bird migration, happening simultaneously across every ocean basin on the planet, every single day, without interruption, without audience, without a season of arrival that anyone celebrates or records. It has been happening since before humans existed. It will continue long after. The world is full of enormous, faithful, unremarkable things, events of staggering scale occurring in silence, outside the range of any human attention, sustaining the balance of life on this planet without asking to be noticed. The ocean does not need to be witnessed to continue its vast and daily work. Most of what keeps the world alive happens without an audience, and it keeps happening anyway, faithfully, every single day. Happiness, studied across a century of psychology and across dozens of cultures and across every methodology that careful science has brought to bear on it, returns again and again to the same quiet finding. It is not found in large events, not in the arrival, the achievement, the milestone, the moment that was supposed to change everything. These matter, their absence can be a real loss, and their presence can bring genuine joy. But the happiness that lasts, the happiness that accumulates across a life into something that feels, at the end, like a life well lived. That happiness is found far more reliably in the texture of ordinary days. The morning with nothing urgent in it. The meal that was not hurried. The walk taken so many times that the feet know it without thinking. The conversation that went longer than expected. The particular quality of light at this hour, in this season, falling across a room that has become, through the slow accumulation of lived days, yours. Researchers studying hedonic adaptation, of the process by which large events lose their emotional power through repetition, have found that the extraordinary always becomes ordinary, given enough time. The milestone becomes a memory. The arrival becomes a departure point for the next wanting. What does not fade is the small and faithful pleasure of a life that fits. The cup of tea made the same way, in the same quiet. The familiar sound from the next room that means someone is home. Ordinary life, lived with attention, is where happiness actually lives. Not waiting for something larger, already here. It has always been here. A single tree, standing in a forest, can hold within it and around it hundreds of distinct species. Insects that feed on its leaves, birds that nest in its hollows, fungi woven through its roots, exchanging minerals for sugar, moss growing in the angles where branches meet the trunk, lichens spreading slowly across its bark, bacteria in the soil its roots have loosened and aerated across decades. The tree does not know it is hosting any of them. It does not offer itself as shelter. It does not arrange its branches to be convenient. It simply grows, reaching toward light, drawing water upward, breathing carbon dioxide in and oxygen out, and in the ordinary course of being exactly what it is, it creates the conditions in which hundreds of other lives become possible. Most of what we give without knowing we are giving it. The person who, simply by being steady, became the ground that someone else learned to stand on. The one whose presence in a room made another person feel less alone, without a word being said about it. The conversation, long forgotten by the one who offered it, that arrived at exactly the right moment in someone else's life and quietly changed the direction of it. You may be someone's tree right now. The shelter you provide may be invisible to you precisely because it is so natural, because it costs you nothing, because it is simply what you are. That is, perhaps, the most generous kind of giving there is. The kind that does not know itself as giving at all. In 1977, NASA launched 2 spacecraft into the outer solar system. Each one carried a golden record, a 12-inch gold-plated copper disc, containing sounds and images selected to represent life on Earth. Should either spacecraft ever be found by another intelligence across the vast dark of interstellar space, on the records surf, wind, thunder, the songs of birds and whales, a mother's first words to her newborn child, greetings spoken in 55 human languages, music from Bach and Beethoven, from a Georgian choir, from a Navajo night chant, from Chuck Berry's Johnny B. Good played on an electric guitar in a recording studio in 1958, and human laughter. Someone, Carl Sagan, and a small committee of human beings who thought carefully about what mattered most, decided that if this object were to travel forever through the dark, it should carry the sound of humans laughing. Not a formula, not a monument, not an achievement or a proof of intelligence. The sound of delight, the sound of a species caught, for a moment, by surprise, surprised into joy. Voyager 1 is now the most distant human-made object in existence. It has left every planet behind. It is alone in a way nothing human has ever been alone before. It will travel for millions of years through interstellar space, long after the civilization that built it has changed beyond recognition or ceased to exist entirely. And it is still carrying our laughter outward, into a dark it will never stop crossing. The sound of humans finding something funny, preserved in gold, traveling forever away from the world that made it. Whatever else we are the species that put laughter on the spacecraft. That felt, when the moment came to choose what to send into eternity, that joy was worth including. Between where you started and where you are going, you are here. Not at the beginning. The beginning is behind you, further than it sometimes seems. Not at the end. The end is ahead, further than it sometimes feels. But here, in the middle of a life that has already survived things that seemed, at the time, unlikely to be survived. In the middle of a story that is still being written, in handwriting that has become, over the years, recognizably yours. This moment, this specific, unremarkable, ordinary moment, is the only one you are actually in. Not the moment you are worried about, not the moment you are hoping for. This one, the one in which your body is breathing without being asked to, in which the heart is keeping its quiet time, in which the day has finally, mercifully, begun to recede. Somewhere between where you started and where you are going, there is this. And this is not nothing. This is not merely the space between the things that matter. This is the thing itself, the actual texture of a life, lived from the inside, moment by moment, in the only direction time allows. You are here, and here, it turns out, is enough. Across every culture that has been studied, across every methodology that researchers have brought to the question of what makes a human life feel meaningful, the findings converge on the same three things. Connection to other people, the sense of contributing something to a world larger than oneself, and a relationship to something, a practice, a belief, a purpose, a belonging that extends beyond the individual life. Not wealth, not status, not comfort, though comfort matters when it is absent, and its absence causes real suffering. These three things, connection, contribution, and something larger, appear across the enormous diversity of human life on Earth, with a consistency that is difficult to explain as coincidence. Different cultures find these things by different names, through different doors, in different forms. The monk and the farmer and the scientist and the parent are all, in their different ways, reaching for the same three sources: connection, contribution, something larger. This is not a prescription. It is a description of what humans, left to their own deepest seeking, seem to keep returning to, of what the nervous system, given real freedom, appears to move toward, of what the long science of well-being, when it has been careful and patient enough, keeps finding at the center of the lives that go well. The answer was never complicated. It was only ever difficult to do. In the shallow bays of Puerto Rico, in quiet inlets of the Maldives, in certain dark lagoons of the world's warmer coastlines, the water glows at night. Touch it, and cold blue-green fire spreads from your hand in the dark. Step into it, and your legs trail light. A boat passing through it leaves a luminous wake that fades slowly, as if reluctant to stop being beautiful. This bioluminescence is produced by single-celled organisms called dinoflagellates. When disturbed by movement in the water, by a wave, a hand, the passage of a hull, they emit light through a chemical reaction that costs them almost nothing. It is, as far as scientists can determine, simply a byproduct of being alive and being moved. The light is not meant to be beautiful. It is not produced for any witness. It requires no audience to occur and no understanding to be real. It is simply what happens when a living thing is touched and responds with everything it has. There are people like this. People who, when something reaches them, respond with a light that is not strategic or measured, that is simply what they do when they are moved. The warmth that arrives before thinking. The generosity that doesn't deliberate. The laugh that happens before the joke is even finished. Bioluminescence is not a performance. It is a nature. And some natures, when touched by the right thing, in the right dark, simply light up. Without trying. Without knowing. Simply because being moved and responding to it is what they do. The human heart will beat. Across an average lifetime. Approximately 3 billion times. It will do this without being asked, without being thanked, without requiring any conscious instruction, any act of will, any awareness on the part of the person it has spent a lifetime sustaining. It began beating approximately 3 weeks after conception, before the brain existed to give it instructions, before you had a nervous system to tell it what to do. It found its rhythm on its own, and it has kept it, through everything, ever since. 3 billion times, through sleep and grief and joy and fear and ordinary Tuesday afternoons and the long quiet of 3 a.m. and every morning that felt impossible and arrived anyway. Through every season that seemed like too much. Through every year that turned out to contain more than it first appeared to. Through this evening, and this breath, and this particular moment of stillness that you have allowed yourself, the heart has never once waited to see if you were worth sustaining before it sustained you. It committed to you completely, at the very beginning, before you had done anything to deserve it. And it has never withdrawn that commitment. Not once. Not for a single beat. Whatever else is uncertain, whatever remains unresolved, unfinished, still waiting for its answer. And this much has been true from the beginning, and remains true now. Something inside you has always been on your side, quietly, without conditions, keeping time for everything else, so that everything else could happen at all. And tonight, in whatever corner of the world you are in whatever room, in whatever quiet, in whatever particular darkness you have made into your resting place, for this one night, the stars are above you. The same stars that received every wish ever made in the dark. The same stars whose light left thousands of years before it reached your window. The same stars that ancient people named in languages no longer spoken, that children point at before they have words for pointing, that sailors navigated by across oceans they could not see the end of. They are still burning. They are still there. And the light reaching you right now, this specific light, arriving at this specific moment, to cleft its source before any of your troubles existed, before the worry that is waiting for you in the morning, before the year that was hard, and the one before it. This light was already traveling toward you. It has been traveling toward you for a very long time. You are here. The body is breathing. The heart is keeping its faithful time. The day has done what it came to do, and now it is releasing you into the dark, into the quiet, into the oldest and most reliable comfort there is. Rest now. Let the mind go soft at its edges. Let the body be held by whatever holds it. Let the breath move in and out without your help, the way it always has, the way it will. The stars will still be burning in the morning, and so, in all likelihood, will you.